Good to see everybody today. First week of May, and we've got another snowstorm coming in, which is good. We've been in a week of 70s, which is good. And now a week, or a few days at least, of snow, which is also good. Nothing bad. That's my talk today. It's the title of my talk today. It's not entirely. Someday, perhaps. Not today. Nothing bad. Ryokan said that the secret of the Soto Zen way was nothing bad. Master Uman said, every day is a good day. Suzuki Roshi, in one of his talks, which comes from this new collection, Becoming Yourself, said the most important point to acknowledge is exactly what Buddha nature is. Buddha nature is not small self, it is big self, which is observing what you do and always accepting what you do. Whatever you do, Buddha nature will say, ah, that's good. There's nothing wrong with it. Enlightenment is to always be aware of that true nature. Always accepting what you do. Always accepting what you do. Suzuki goes on and says, Ryokan wasn't concerned about what anyone said or about what he himself felt. It's interesting. It's one thing to not be concerned. He doesn't say he doesn't care, actually, but he says he's not concerned. He doesn't fret over it. He doesn't take it personally, what other people said. But he also isn't concerned about what he feels. I think Ryokan certainly felt strongly, but he didn't take those feelings to be somehow authoritative or somehow indicate the rightness or the righteousness of what was going on. In fact, Suzuki says that Ryokan had a sharp and strict sense of his Buddha nature. Okay? So this not being concerned about doesn't mean just, okay, whatever. It doesn't mean not being attentive, not being meticulously attentive. In fact, the Soto Zen way is very meticulously attentive. We did our service today, and our service is an opportunity to practice this meticulous attention to our posture, to our movements, to our speech, our invocation, all these qualities. I remember, when was it, 20 years ago? Maybe? Close to 20 years ago. I was in San Francisco, and I went to the San Francisco Zen Center, and they're actually having like a 45th anniversary ceremony of some sort. I happened to be there then, and so I was happy to join in some celebration they had. About 70 people packed into a room about maybe a little smaller than this. And some of the Roshis in that lineage were leading the service, and they were so precise in their movements, so precise with every step, more so than I had come to kind of observe and embody through my teachers. Not that my teachers were sloppy at all, but this was especially meticulous. Everything about it. And for the first few moments, I thought, this is really stiff. This feels really stiff here. But as the moments went on, and as I just watched and observed them and took it in, I could see the real freedom and flow that they had in the movements. It was graceful, it was beautiful, it was expressive. It wasn't stiff at all. It's really wonderful. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been Mel Weitzman, who's the main editor of this book, just to bring it around. There were two people who were officiating. So Ryokan had this nature. He accepted everything. There's the famous story of Ryokan, accepting the fact that a thief came and stole all of the things from his hovel, and then he even said, the moon in the window, he left it behind. He wished he could give him even more than he stole from him. Really accepting. But also very, very present, very to the point. A strict and sharp sense of his Buddha nature. So it takes practice to maintain this sharp and strict sense of nothing bad. Nothing bad. To really maintain this openness, this acceptance, and this appreciation. Why? Because our preferences, our judgments, and our opinions are so quick and so automatic. And they kind of hijack us very quickly into an assessment and a course of action. This is good, this is better, this is best, this is bad. Support the good and put down the bad. It isn't only about judgments and opinions, too. It's about avoidances and resistances. Sometimes when we talk about good and bad, we think it's all up in the head in a way, kind of like a judgment. But this also has to do with these emotional postures towards the world and towards people and situations. Right? So nothing bad also means nothing to avoid. Nothing to resist. Now we get into stickier territory, perhaps, because you may tell yourself, I don't judge. I've been practicing a long time. I know enough to question my opinions. But what about your resistances and avoidances? Are those happening? There's an internalized, you could say, judgment or opinion, position with respect to phenomena, in that avoidance and that resistance. Nothing bad. No avoidance. No resistance. Every day is a good day. Accept everything. Include everything. So these preferences, judgments, avoidances, opinions, resistances that just come up so quick. It's almost like the operating system. They become like our operating system. We rely on them, actually, perhaps, to be that operating system to tell our instruction sets what to do next and what to say next and such. But if we catch them in time, if we interrupt them, or if we observe them without acting them, we can put the gun down. We're locked and loaded. What if we put the gun down and accept it? How can we live this nothing bad? It's subtle. So we do have to truly see and acknowledge and accept our differences, but without clinging to good and bad. You know, even seasoned practitioners, as many of you are, can cling to certain mind states. Right? You want to sit more in order to get to a certain mind state. A certain level of acceptance, perhaps. This level of acceptance is good, but not level of acceptance is bad. So now we layer on the judgments and opinions subtly. We can even say, well, discrimination is bad. Not recognizing that we're doing it. We're discriminating between discrimination and non-discrimination, and we're saying one is better than the other. So there's 3 cases from the Blue Cliff record that all give different responses by Master Joshu to the same teaching, which pertains here. So this hopefully will be enjoyable to look at 3 ways of responding. This is Blue Cliff record cases 57, 58, and 59. So let's start with 57. A monk asked Master Joshu if, quote, the supreme way has no difficulty, it just rejects discrimination, then what is non-discrimination? Joshu said, in the heavens and on earth, only I alone am noble. The monk said, this is still discrimination. Joshu said, Oaf, where is the discrimination? The monk said nothing. Okay, so many of you will recognize the quote that the monk asks Master Joshu to be the first lines of the Shinshin Mei, trust in faith mind. If the supreme way has no difficulty, it just rejects discrimination, is the line he quotes. We translate it as, the great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. So this translation opens it up, I think, more helpfully for us. Okay, so it's not about non-discrimination, it's about picking and choosing. So this is the important distinction to make here. All right, discrimination, we're always discriminating between forms. The relative world, we're appreciating the relative world in all its variety and uniqueness. Right? But it's the picking and choosing. It's the acting on the preferences, acting on the opinions, that the problem comes in. The difficulty comes in. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. What is this great way? Yeah, the great way. Maha. No, Maha, the great way. The great way is not the path that you walk. We all want to walk the Tao, walk the way. Okay? The way is the way of the universe walks. all beings. That's what Maha is. Maha means so big that there's no outside. So it's the way that includes everything. It's the way that all things are walking. Nothing bad, nothing not included. Everything walks the way. What does Joshu say? In the heaven and on earth, only I alone am noble. That I alone is not limited to the body of Shakyamuni Buddha. I alone am the honorable, which is what he said to find his awakening experience, right? Throughout space and time, all beings everywhere are simultaneously awakened in his experience. Oh, Joshu's asked, what is non-discrimination, right? What is non-discrimination? And he gives it to him. He says, I alone. That means everything, is noble. But what does the monk hear? Oh, you're discriminating between I and you and me, or you and others. The I and the not I. That's not the I that Joshu is manifesting. So Joshu calls him an oaf. Okay. Another monk, I hope it's another monk, it's Joshu. The supreme way is without difficulty, it just rejects discrimination. Same line. Isn't this a cliche for people these days? Joshu said, once someone asked me and I simply couldn't give an explanation for 5 years. Okay. So, isn't this a cliche? Okay, so what's the monk's mindset here? He's like, this is kind of a tired concept. In fact, commentary from Hakuin and Tenkei implies that he might even be criticizing Joshu. That you talk about discrimination and non-discrimination. And we talk about it so much. I mean, isn't that just a cliche to talk about things in this way? And Joshu kind of just pulls the rug out from under him. Once someone asked me and I simply couldn't give an explanation for 5 years. It's sort of like the opposite of a cliche, right? A cliche is something, you know right away what it is. That's obvious. It's really standard. And Joshu brings in, I don't know, that's really mysterious. 5 years, I'm still working on that one. Just turns him upside down, right? So that's us. We can see how we can both have these discrimination. What is non-discrimination? Oh, discrimination's everywhere. Discrimination's everywhere. That's the first monk. And now this one. Oh, well, let's talk of discrimination and non-discrimination. Well, you're the one that's making the problem. You're the one who's adding that judgment to the teaching. Isn't that a cliche? You're a cliche. But Joshu, he's a little... so Joshu is, many of you know, considered a master of the verbal turning words. Not the stick, not the silence, but turning words that would just really open up the questioner, the person he was meeting with. That's why we have so many, record of his sayings, because his sayings were so powerful in context. Joshu didn't have any successors, as far as we know. So it was a different kind of teaching. To me, it was a legacy teaching. Because he spoke and people wrote it down, it's for us, it wasn't for them. So we're his successors. And then the third. monk asked Joshu, the supreme way has no difficulty, it just rejects discrimination. As soon as there are words spoken, the monk says, this is discrimination. How do you help people, teacher? Okay. Joshu said, why not quote this saying fully? The monk said, I only remember to this point. Joshu said, it's just this. The supreme way has no difficulty. It just rejects discrimination. So this is kind of funny, and Joshu is just masterful here with this guy. I mean, so, you know, remember, this is the first line of the Shinshin Ming. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. And the monk says, that's all I remembered. Dude, come on. You know, that's all you got. It goes on to say, just to flesh it out, when preferences are cast aside, the way stands clear and undisguised. But even slight distinctions made set earth and heaven far apart. If you would clearly see the truth, discard opinions, pro and con. Okay, so maybe Joshu was saying, you know, say another couplet or two, keep going with it. Maybe, I don't know. But he doesn't, you know, I don't know if he's clever or he's dull or he's being provocative, but he says, that's all I know, so what do you got? You know, he says, quote it fully. And then he quotes it back and he says, it's just like this, and he says exactly what he says. So what I take from this is, in adding on his question, isn't this discrimination? Isn't all the words discrimination? He's creating the problem. He's creating it. That question. He didn't take the fullness of the teaching. The fullness was just, the great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. In adding his cleverness to it, his analysis to it, he subtracted from it. It was no longer a full teaching. It was crippled. He crippled it. In order to live wholeheartedly, to live in this nothing badness of our Buddha nature, we can't add these extra analyses, discriminations, and preferences, the picking and choosing, the analysis. In his commentary on this third one, Tenkei says, the problem was the monk clinging to, as soon as there are words spoken. That's what the monk says. But Joshu, master, as soon as there are words spoken, this is discrimination. How do you help people, teacher? Okay. It's like, oh, but words spoken, discrimination, bad. You see what's going on with him? Words spoken, discrimination, bad. So Tenkei says, and clinging to that opinion, that holding, that attachment to that sense, that meaning, that's where the problem comes in. So how to hold this mind of nothing bad. Yeah. It does take some effort. It does take some practice. It does take some diligence and willingness to be continuously present with your heart consciousness, with your feelings. The subtle evasions and the subtle resistances of the feelings How much of what we do over the course of the day is to feel better and not feel bad, and to feel comfortable and not feel uncomfortable, the way that sort of channels us in certain directions to do certain things or to say certain things or to withdraw from certain things, those subtle evasions. But to hold this mind of nothing bad is also to not allow the fruits of your opinions to sprout. They can just sprout. We can catch them before they sprout into action. So the first line of the verse to case 59, the third one I read, is water cannot wet, wound cannot penetrate. This is not picking and choosing. I lost my page that I had here on this, but in Suzuki Roshi's commentary that I was drawing from with respect to Ryokan and nothing bad, he said Ryokan would hold his mind like a stone, and you couldn't plant anything on the stone. And we also have this image of the Iron Mountain in Zen. So these are a little provocative images. You know, when I hear there's the stone and the tree without leaves in the winter. You know, it's a famous Zen metaphor image as well. The stone that doesn't sprout. It feels cold and not heartful. But that's not what it is. It really isn't. Although maybe some people did mean it that way, and maybe there were some Zen practitioners who did hold it that way. But that's not the depth of it, really. It doesn't mean not to be warm and emotionally connected and to feel your feelings. It means not to let the fruits of your preferences and opinions sprout. Not to let those grow. There's fertile ground in that mind, you know, for those things to grow and kind of for the weeds to take over. So it's to hold a mind and a heart space that doesn't feed those things. Okay, I know everybody here has some contact with that, you know, in Zazen. It can be very, very present, very feeling of your heart, but those little things that pull you away into a kind of self-centered and protective kind of mode, you can sense when those things are kind of operating, right? And you have to bring yourself back to your quality of being. Right? Yeah. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. Don't pick and choose, do, allow, accept, appreciate. And then everything walks the way together. And we walk the way together, and you're not separate. You're not separate from all that is. Nothing bad. Nothing that is not me. Nothing that is not I. all together in this very, very dynamic, full activity, constantly alive, never stopping. Yeah, so we participate in that. So why add extra in the form of good or bad, this or that? I prefer this over that. It's also amazing and rich and constantly changing, and the unexpected constantly happening too. So curiosity, acceptance, embrace is Buddha nature in action. Okay, I hope this was inspiring. Thank you for your attention.